everybody, and I'm Andie Kramer, and I'm here with Jeremy Weinstein, absolute expert in the area, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking together today. What we're here to talk about is the 2025 Energy and Environmental Project Finance book, Law, Taxation, New Investment Strategies. And it's a new book that's out by LexisNexis this year, 2025. And we're going to be updating it on an annual basis. The area is facing a lot of change. A lot of important things are happening in both the traditional energy and the renewable energy area. And the purpose of these little videos are to introduce some of our key contributors and talk to them about their contributions to the book. I'm co-author of the book with Nicholas Mulberry, and I'm here today with Jeremy, as I said, Jeremy Weinstein, a amazing lawyer and a dear friend of mine. And so, Jeremy, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can kind of roll up our sleeves.
Sure. So thank you, Andie. And I was just actually thinking while you're introducing me that I've been a lawyer for 38 years, and you and I have been cooperating and working together, either directly, co-counsel for clients, or working on various books and academic endeavors for 20 years, which is, the bulk of my career. So it's been just an absolute real pleasure to be your friend. So I'm Jeremy Weinstein, and with the law office of Jeremy Weinstein, I've been on my own since 1991. Before that, I was in-house counsel with a large utility called Pacific Corp. I represent load-serving entities, investor-owned utilities, publicly owned utilities, cooperatives in 40 of the 50 United States on energy procurement, energy trading, renewable energy procurement, carbon allowances, carbon offsets, renewable energy credits. And this has been a wonderful area, because the beauty of this area is, as when you're working in an innovative area, you get to really establish the new techniques and the new ways of contracting. And I do think the way Andie has been in entitling her books over the years, where we're talking about new investment techniques, new techniques, these are indeed new techniques. The books are as advertised, and it's just, that's why it's just a real pleasure. I mean, every day coming to work, getting to work with good clients, and getting to come up with new ways, not just new solutions to all problems, but new solutions to new problems.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Jeremy, especially for your contributions to this book. You've contributed a number of important chapters. We're going to highlight two of them today. But I want everybody to know that this is not your first major contribution. This book was published 15 years ago by Oxford University Press. And Jeremy, you were one of the important major contributors to this book 15 years ago. And so the changes that we've seen between now and then have been just so dramatic. So dramatic. And so let's focus on two of the chapters that you've put into this book. One of them is about the techniques for renewable resource power purchase agreement off-takers, Chapter 7, and Chapter 9, practical considerations for trading electricity on standard industry forms. And so I figure before we start talking about the substance, I think it's probably not a bad idea to spend a few minutes on some of the key definitions, because there are people who may understand the area inside out, but we also have people who are just curious about it, or beginners, or just trying to get a handle on what's going on. And so I thought if I offered up a few of the words phrases, terms, you could share them with us, and then we could dive into some of the importance of how they all fit together. And so we're talking about a power purchase agreement to start with. So tell us about a power purchase agreement and what makes that different from or similar to a virtual power purchase agreement.
Well, sure, Andie. So a power purchase agreement is typically used by load serving entities in order to acquire load. So with the FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, establishing renewable transmission organizations and transmission markets and energy markets in the 1990s as part of competitive electricity markets, we completely reformed energy markets because the model before then was vertically integrated utilities. So if you got electricity for your lights, you got it from a utility who owned the wires that brought power to your house from the generating plants that they owned. And so the theory of competitive markets is that, well, we can have the utilities compete they can own generation or they can buy generation as well. And if the generation they purchase market makes it cheaper to purchase generation, then that will lower electricity prices for people. And so the theory of competitive markets is kind of establishing that you not only have owned generation that you as a utility own, but you have purchased generation that you as a utility purchase from what's called an independent power producer. The independent power producer establishes builds a plant. And in the 1990s, there was the ability to build larger plants. Starting with the Carter administration, there was a statute called Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act, where you could have a qualifying facility. These tended to be smaller facilities. They tend to be new technology facilities. But my first power purchase agreement I worked on in 1989 with a qualifying facility. And so the power purchase agreement is a way for utilities to acquire power from plants they don't own at prices that are designed to be competitive. And a virtual power purchase agreement is a way for entities that aren't actually buying the power itself and don't want the power itself to participate in renewable energy markets. So a power purchase agreement can be for a gas plant. Typically, they were for gas plants. What happens when you sign a power purchase agreement, if you're a utility, is you sign up for 20 years. And with that agreement, the developer, which is a special purpose entity, is just a shell that its only assets are the power plant and the power purchase agreement, takes to a bank. The bank says, I'll lend you money based on the power purchase agreement because you have the commitment from the utility. And now the developer has the money to build the plant to serve the power purchase agreement. So corporations wanted to, so you can have a power purchase agreement for gas plants, and in the early 2000s, a popular technique for developing new renewables, which utilities were leery of getting into, was power purchase agreements from renewable developers. So power purchase agreements became a very important tool for the renewable sector to serve utilities. Now, you still have the power purchase agreement as a tool that is necessary in order to have the plant constructed. And so for a virtual power purchase agreement, you still have a large corporation that makes a pledge to use renewable energy or wants to use renewable energy. It itself is not taking the energy. What is going on is the energy is going into an organized market. It's not being purchased by the corporate. There are renewable energy credits, the RECs, the renewableness of the energy that is going to the corporate, and the corporate gets to say, hey, I'm causing renewable energy to come to the grid. And because the corporate is entering into a 20-year PPA or 15-year PPA, it's virtual power purchase agreement, it enables the developer to go to a bank and say, okay, now I can finance a new project. And with that, there is the concept of additionality, which is brought over from climate policy. So climate policy is additionality is the concept of a incremental action to mitigate global warming gas emissions that is incremental to what would have happened anyway. You're not required by law to do it. It's more than what would have happened. And so by taking a PPA, taking a virtual PPA, the corporate is causing the building of this new renewable energy resource that a utility didn't ask for, and it's additional. It's incremental to what would have happened anyway. And so the utility has, I mean, not the utility, the corporate has through its virtual power purchase agreement, has caused new renewable energy to take place, to be constructed. So it has the additionality, plus it has the renewable energy credits. And so a virtual power purchase agreement can be constructed through a number of different ways. And we discuss this and the very detailed regulatory compliance regimes that are involved in connection with each choice that is made in terms of how they're structured in detail in this book and how to document it in this book. And you can have the energy transaction work as a hedge, in which case it's a swap, or you could have the energy transaction be, I'm purchasing the RECs, I'm purchasing the RECs either for a price, or I'm purchasing it for a price that is derived from the LMP or the price at the node where the power is delivered by the resource or a nearby liquid trading hub. And that enables the renewable energy credits to go to the purchasing corporate. Corporate gets to claim correctly and honestly and justly that it is achieving this environmental benefit. And it also has the additionality of causing the resource to be constructed. And so a virtual power purchase agreement tends to be a corporate trying to accomplish the goal of causing more renewable energy to come to the grid and bettering the environment. And a regular PPA is generally a utility or other load-serving entity saying, I want to have a long-term power supply.
Perfect. And so to sort of summarize that, what we really got going here is it's allowing the developers to be sure that they have a source of to sell the power, that
Right.
they've got a resource, that they're creating this, and so that allows them to finance it. And so the key there is that all of these pieces build together to finance the transactions. You've been talking about load servers, but the title of the chapter is an off-taker. So tell us if there's any difference between a load server and an off-taker.
So that's a great question, Andie. And by off-taker, I mean the entity that is either the entity that's the load-serving entity of a PPA, or it is the purchaser of the RECs from the by the virtual PPA. So it is somebody who is taking the resource. So we did, I believe, change the title from 15 years ago for
Yes.
when utilities were dominating. And we moved to off-takers to reflect what you noted, which is this development. So you have, I would say most of the renewable development right now in the United States is the corporates that are off-takers, as opposed to the utilities that are buying through a PPA.
Right. The load servers. Right.
Right.
And so I'm not going to be asking you to talk about RECs any further, other than that I'm going to mention that you have a chapter in the book about RECs. And so not to let them be pushed to the side. They're an important part of all of this. But that leads me to sort of my next question, which is the new Tax Act, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Changed the availability of some of the tax credits. And have those changes affected the off-takers? And do you think that those changes are going to affect the viability of PPAs, whether they're the virtual ones or the regular ones going forward?
So it's interesting, Andie, and almost ironic. So first of all, the cool kids call it OB3.
Yes.
So OB3
instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi, huh?
Right, is sunsetting the tax benefits. I do think the tax benefits because there was so much overhead in terms of legal structures and it's just very complicated structures that were necessary, and the sale of the tax credits. And I don't know, even if you had, like, for example, a $28 megawatt tax credit, I don't know that is more than $10 or $15 off the price of the power. I don't know. I haven't done any analysis, but I just don't see it as fatal, having lost those particular tax benefits. I think the problems have been or are out of this concept of risks that are presented by new rules. And so contracts, techniques that we haven't talked about here are, very specific risk sharings. I think actually we do talk about risk sharing in connection with interconnection queues and interconnection upgrade costs. So you would just simply say, all right, well, the techniques are here for how you share interconnection upgrade costs. If they go above a certain level, you can do the same thing with, okay, I have unexpected tariff costs. It's like, okay, well, give me a list of all your equipment. What's going to be imported, what's not, how are you responsible for it, what are you expecting to pay, what's the budget? All right, well, we can look at what you finally paid and come up with some sort of maximum or some kind of ability to kind of share that specific risk. I have seen, the developers start with very broad provisions saying, oh, if there's any kind of change in law, I want to be compensated for that, or I want an off and out. And it's like, no. Tell us what the actual expense that you anticipated was. Tell us how the expense that you incurred is different, and let's figure out a way to translate that in a $1 per megawatt charge, or however we can come to terms. But it seek to avoid sort of broad, like, oh my God, change in law. It's like, be very specific. And in terms of the renewables, I mean, I think the administration's attitude towards renewable energy facilities is separate from what has been legislated in OB3. That's just, I think that tends to be on a per resource basis. I think you also have to look at various state laws that are being introduced in some states. Just be aware of what's being introduced, but I really don't see OB3 as taking away the industry. I just don't see it.
And I think that's an important thing to underline about the chapter before we move on to the next one, which is that PPAs are here to stay, whether they're the real ones or the virtual ones, and whether we have these tax credits or not, whether you get them or you don't, it's a cost issue. It's a pricing issue.
Right. That's exactly right, Andie. And you know what? This reminds me of why I started with the word irony, because in the Biden administration Infrastructure Act, the utilities were allowed to get the tax benefits themselves. So if you looked at the Biden statute and read it and looked at its implications, you'd realize, well, wait a minute, this completely destroys the IPP sector. Because why do you need the IPPs to get the tax benefits when I can do that myself and I can get 100%? And yet, years into it, the utilities did not, exploit that or build it. And I don't know whether or not there was like the genius of markets where people kind of figured it out. But even in a statute that said, let's end IPPs entirely.
And that's independent power producers.
Right. Didn't happen. And I mean, definitely, I think the IPPs would have served corporates, because the corporates wouldn't have been in the position like of the utilities of being able to take the tax credits. But I really did not see any diminution in utilities and IOUs contracting for renewable resources on account of, I think utilities began to seek to understand how to model building itself and kind of what their costs were. I just think the utility sector it's beyond an aircraft carrier in terms of how you can move it.
It's a different it's a whole different animal, and they don't need to do it. and they can get the same benefits in other ways. That's what they've been doing. And that, I think that's a perfect segue to chapter 9, which is the practical considerations for trading electricity on standard industry forms. So now we've got the power, and it's electricity in these examples, and we've got various standard forms. Now, back when we started our careers, there were no standard forms, and so it was pretty much a mess. But tell us what some of the popular standard electricity trading forms are now, and when each of them is appropriate for use.
Sure. So the sort of the granddaddy standard form that has been used for trading, that has been the model from which other forms have developed, is the original international swap dealers, now called the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, master contracts. So they started having contracts for trading just derivative contracts in the 80s and the 90s. And these were, non-physicals, just interest rates and foreign exchange and just the broad or equity derivatives. And as energy markets developed in the 1990s, people realized, well, you could hedge energy costs. And large energy marketers developed in the late 1990s and discovered that the tools for master trading should be available in energy markets. And so the Edison Electric Institute developed a master purchase and sale agreement, and that master purchase and sale agreement is a very simplified ISDA plus credit support annex, kind of built in for physical electricity trading. It's extremely robust. There's a committee, a committee that maintains that contract and provides supplements. And over the years, I'm co-chair of the committee. We've provided various supplemental forms. So we have annexes like a Rex annex and a annex to trade California carbon products, allowances, annexes to trade other commodities that can be added to it. But fundamentally, it's a very simple and straightforward and survive. We're 25 years later, and it's still the fundamental trading instrument for electricity markets. The Gas Industry Standards Board, which has now morphed into the North American Energy Standards Board, NASB, has a gas contract that started as a GISB short-term contract in the 90s. Then they had a contract in 2002. And the current contract's of 2006, which has had some very minor changes to it, but 20 years later, it's still very robust. And so those are really solid forms. And also what people do is, over the years, ISDA has taken took the EEI and turned it into a power annex. So the power annex to the ISDA is the EEI, Power Purchase and Sale Agreement, just grafted right on. And the gas annex for the ISDA is the NASB, which has just been converted into an annex. So you can have you can have an ISDA with a power and a gas annex, and it provides robust credit protection. It enables much larger trading relationships to exist between counterparties.
And the importance of all of this is that in the chapter, you carefully go through various provisions as to what people need to be on the lookout for in negotiating these contracts. And so as a sort of a wrap up, could you give us some practical considerations that our viewers should keep their eyes on?
Oh, sure.
In negotiating or thinking about which contract to use, and once they've decided, some negotiating tips.
Right. Well, exactly. So I mean, the advantage of a master agreement is if you have multiple trades under a single contract, some of the transactions are in the money, some of the transactions are out of the money at any given time, because different markets move differently, and you can have many transactions between two single counterparties, because they're under an integrated master agreement, that gets accepted or rejected on a unitary basis in a bankruptcy. So it provides that credit protection. It prevents a bankrupt party from picking only the transactions that are in its favor.
And let me underline that for a second, because people very often don't understand that point, which is because very often clients will say, well, I've got a detailed confirmation, so I can just use this confirmation for each of my transactions. And the answer is, well, if you do that, you're not eligible for the bankruptcy protection because you don't have it under a master agreement. And so Jeremy's point is really an important one, which is that the way you even think about structuring these from in the first place becomes critically important.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you that protection, and it enables you to engage in exchanging of collateral where you understand the mark-to-market positions across your entire portfolio with a single counterparty. And because you are netting and setting off your relationship with a single counterparty, coming out of the energy crises in the early 2000s, people recognized the value that Andie just pointed out and added language to enhance that value, saying that, well, I'm going to set off if you owe me money under anywhere in our relationship, we can offset that against what we owe each other under this master agreement with all of our trades. And so this is an example of, well, actually, you know what? Maybe that works between two banks trading commodities, commodity derivatives between them. Maybe that works between two entities that aren't utilities trading entities between them. But an example of, well, let's think about what we're doing and who my client is. If you have a regulated utility, there are some regulated utilities that are in RTOs, and the transmission function is completely devolved to the RTO. And there are some utilities that are in, like utilities that serve most of the Southeast, utilities that serve most of the Western United States. They still have transmission functions. So they have a regulatorily separate transmission function. And that transmission function charges rates, and the counterparty, which if you're a regulated utility and you're doing trades with a energy marketer, that energy marketer is not only talking to you, they are completely separately purchasing transmission from your transmission function. That's not the merchant function that's doing the trading. So the utility FERC has established very firm guardrails to say that the transmission function and the merchant function can't be talking to each other, because otherwise the merchant function will take advantage of owning the transmission function.
Can screw up the pricing.
Right, exactly. So they're required to keep it separate. So because they are required to keep it separate, and because they are separate transactions, and because even though it is the same legal person, as far as FERC is concerned, it is different legal people. When you're providing for netting and set off, you need to think, oh, wait a minute, I should not be setting off my transmission function relationship with my merchant function relationship, because it's illegal, because it violates the filed rate doctrine, because it's giving one customer preference over your rates that you are not allowed to grant, because you're not allowed to prefer one customer over the other in rates. And so in the textbook, that, and I'm really proud of this, is that we don't just say, oh, you have a problem. We say, here's the problem and here is the solution. We provide the contract language that you can put in the agreement to protect yourself and comply with your obligations under FERC standards of conduct.
And so that's really one of the keys about energy and environmental project finance, the book, which is that we have Jeremy, who is sharing a lot of firsthand experience with all of us in a way that's readable and easy to follow. And so as a wrap up, Anything else you would like to say to the viewers about the book, your chapters? They're approaching it. Some are going to start at the beginning and read all the way from beginning to end. Some are going to start at the back and read forward, and some are just going to cherry pick, most likely.
Right.
And so what advice would you give to viewers who read the book in very different ways for very different purposes?
Well, I mean, number one, I would invite the readers to give us feedback, because we're going to be updating this yearly. So to the extent there's information that you have, the extent your experiences are different, to the extent you have anything to share about your own experiences with these clauses or with the legal issues that are presented, please let us know, let Andie know, and she'll share it with us. But this is something that is going to be kept current and is going to be a living book and live with how the market continues to move along. I think because of the approach Andie took to putting the book together, which is a lot of different practitioners from all these different walks of what it takes to put power plants together, there's multiple different perspectives. So it's imagine that you're reading a book on you get both sides of the story. So in other words, because you have multiple authors, you've got people who are approaching it from all sides, and so you get a much broader perspective on how things done. So I think if you're a reader, what I would do is I wouldn't stop at one chapter. I would say, all right, well, I've asked this problem. I have found a really good approach to the solution. Let me see if there's another one, and it's all very well outlined. Lexis did a good job having section outlined, so it's very easy to track and to find from the table of contents another perspective on whatever issue you're looking for.
I think that's a terrific wrap up, because there's a lot of interesting things in the book. Jeremy's chapters are fabulous. He's an excellent writer, and I think that those of you that were on the fence, give it a try. You might like it. And so with that, I'd like to thank Jeremy for your time and for your contributions to the book. And I think your call for feedback is an excellent way to wrap this up, because we can address the issues that you've got by understanding what those issues are. And
Right.
So we're approachable, and please come forward, tell us what you're thinking. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Andie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.